Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Curnow and I work for ANZ Bank in Sydney, Australia, and I'm a director in their private bank business. I'm very thankful to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you all today and share with you some stories I've gained in my 20 years in this industry. My hope is that one of these stories connects with you and leaves you feeling a little more confident about your career. I'd like to take you back to when I was a little girl. I was thinking about this last night and how much gender norms play a role in our lives as we progress into adulthood. And when I was much younger, I was sitting at the dinner table with my little brother who asked my mum for more dinner. My mum was very happy to give him a second helping and he was very happy to eat it. When I requested additional food, my mum said no. When I queried why, the response was because I'm not a growing boy. This small, otherwise insignificant experience in my formative years is one of many that set the tone for what I could ask for. This was a lesson I gained in my family home that extended into my adulthood, where I witnessed men be given things, such as opportunities in the workplace, but saw women often required to ask for them, and in many instances, be declined. This was the narrative that my mother taught me, and I now see that it set me on a path specific to my gender, a path that is in direct contrast to that of my brothers. And this is the problem with gender norms. Once they're ingrained in us so early on in our formative years, it's very hard for us to unlearn these things. So growing up in this industry, I did work really hard to be accepted by my leaders, to be seen or viewed in the same light as my male counterparts. And I've also got many examples where I do believe that male leaders have often critiqued my abilities much harder than they have my colleagues that are male. One such example is many years ago when I received what I call a pivotal promotion in my career. I was told by the senior leader upon getting this promotion that whilst it was congratulations, Sarah, it was also just know that we've taken a huge risk on you. Only a few weeks later, my male colleague was promoted as well, and he was promoted to the same level as me, and he was given a morning tea actually, and he was also positioned as an investment in the company's future leadership. But I really want us to think about that and look at that narrative. I was a risk and he was an investment. I was a punt and he was a sure thing. I now see that that's a perception that still exists today, and it's a perception that we really do need to change. Women are not risks. Women do bring in returns and we are just as valuable, and we need to be seen in that way for opportunities to continue to be presented to us the same way opportunities are presented to our male counterparts. So as I continue today with this presentation, I really want you to think about some of the messages that have been ingrained in you and your career, because these messages actually is what foster disparities in leadership, and it's prevalent in all industries today. And it's very much commonplace, I believe, in the banking industry. And I also have to say that I find it really hard to reconcile at times that now in 2021, women still around the world are not equal to men. And even in Australia, when I think about women's rights, we are arguably much more progressive than other parts of the world, and yet we are still not trusted in positions of power. When you think about large companies and you look to the CEO, the CFO, we typically still see men. We do have some power, but we can never seem to have too much. And the Global 500 confirms this. The Global 500 is the world's largest companies, and together they generated 33 trillion in revenues, 2.1 trillion in profits in 2019. In fact, collectively, they employ almost 70 million people worldwide, and they're represented in 32 countries. It is big business, it's arguably the big leagues, and men are running it. So I've already told you it's the Global 500. How many women do you think sit in a CEO position? The number is 13, just 13. And in 2020, when this list came out, it did not do much for diversity because not one woman of color made it onto that list. And in individual markets around the world, it also tells a familiar story. If you look at the European index known as the FTSE 100, there's only 5 female CEOs that make that list. Here in Australia, on the ASX 200, there's only 10. And if we jump across to the United States, in the S&P 500, there's 31. If I was to add all of those indexes up, we're talking about 800 companies across Australia, across Europe, across the United States, where only 46 women have been trusted into the ultimate position of power, which we know is the CEO. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Many people will tell you that things are getting better, and they are. And every time we see a female appointed to the CEO position, we should celebrate that, and we should use that to motivate us. It's also really important that we let our success be measured by numbers. And if I'm really honest, ladies, these numbers, they suck. Now, we can't govern this, we can't flag it illegal, but we can question it, and we most certainly can be pursuing an understanding of why. When I decided to speak here today, I did so because I just felt like it's time. I've been in this industry for 2 decades, I've worked really hard and done a lot of different roles, and I've had a lot of different experiences, some really positive ones, but some negative ones too. And I've never spoken about those negative ones, and I think it's important. I also have the belief, if he can, I can. He embodies all men, and I is myself and every other woman. As I've just highlighted, in many industries, there's a lack of women in leadership. We need to change this, and we need to start by breaking down barriers and speaking up so we can secure more seats at the table. If he can, I can is about empowering women everywhere to demand a higher standard for excellence, and to know that respect is not something you need to earn when our male counterparts find it given. So it's time. We need to act and fight for our careers now, but we need to be really upfront about the challenges holding us back so that we can rewrite the narrative. Because ladies, if he can win, I can win too. In this session, we're going to cover 3 key areas. 1, creating better working environments for women. 2, unlearning the social conditioning of women needing to be modest. And 3, how to partner with good men in our industry and organizations. Let's start with creating a better working environment for women. I told you I've been in this industry for a while. I started initially at 17, so I was a bit of a novelty. And I've experienced being the new kid, the young gun, someone's protege, an emerging leader, the token woman, to competition, to a bitch. These are just labels that I've experienced. I've been told not to dress too pretty. I've been told after delivering a presentation to an audience of only men, not to wear dangly earrings when I'm giving presentations because others find it very distracting. I've sat at tables as the only woman and had men talk over me. And I've watched male leaders ask my male peers for their point of view while they completely ignored my presence. In more jarring moments, I've been sexually harassed and sexually assaulted across my career in this industry. One memory that sticks out that really was quite strange was a Tuesday morning when I was at the photocopier machine compiling some loan documents, and a male colleague came up from behind and grabbed my ass. When I reacted the way that I did, he told me like he meant it as a joke and it was supposed to be funny, but it wasn't. And in a more memorable, very disturbing moment, I was at a work event and it was a lunch, and all of us were there with our clients at this particular lunch. My client was worth over $100 million. I was seated next to him at a table. He put his hand underneath the table and placed it on my thigh. He did this repeatedly for several hours. These are the things that I actually did in this scenario. I physically removed his hand from my thigh. I asked him several times, please don't touch me. I moved my chair as far away as I could from him without it looking awkward because I was representing my company and I was at a work event. And I got up and left the table several times in hope that by doing so, he would stop. He didn't. I never raised it. I never did anything about it, and I hadn't planned to either. But my leader was actually at this event and he saw it happen. He certainly empathized and apologized, but he also then in the next breath said, we just have to be really careful. He's had a lot to drink. He's a very profitable customer and we don't want to rock the boat on this relationship. The point that I'm trying to make is this: gender discrimination, sexual harassment, and sexual assault are happening in workplaces, and it's derailing women's careers and forcing us to work in environments that condone it. I really don't like talking about this. Who would? But we have to get comfortable in having uncomfortable conversations, so young women joining our industry today never have these experiences. I want to explain a little bit about what happens when these experiences take place, because I think that that's really important for people to understand how it derails our careers. When instances like I've just described that happened to me occur, we are damaged. It really impacts our confidence. It impacts our self-esteem. We are unable to perform at our optimum. And a lot of the times, the situation ends in 2 ways. 1, The woman will say, you know what, this environment's not for me. I'm so uncomfortable. I don't want to be in it. And they resign and they go somewhere else looking for a fresh start. And the person that's behaving that way continues, but they repeatedly offend now with somebody else. So the impact continues, but it actually worsens and widens. The other way is that they lodge a formal complaint and it goes through the internal protocols, and typically an investigation takes place, a deed of release or a separation of employment is drawn up, and a financial settlement is made. The reason this is really, really important to understand is that in both of those examples, the women have to leave the organization. When we think about creating better workplace environments for women, we also have to think about the role we play in this. And I've had to examine myself very closely when it comes to this. I had been jaded and burned a few times with my experiences, so I didn't really want to get involved in anything that I thought could be a detractor for my career and my career progression. And what I did was I took the advice that male leaders had given me, and I provided that same advice and taught it to female colleagues and peers that approached me with concerns. Once a female peer confided in me and said that she was being sexually harassed, and she provided me with evidence. I empathized with her, but I also told her to let it go and to just hang in there until she got a new gig. I discouraged her from speaking out because I truly thought that I was protecting her. But I was wrong. I was a bystander. I saw that she was suffering and I gave her weak advice and I let her resign from the organization. It's tough to talk about these things because I know that it's not in the past. I know that these things still happen and I find it deeply disturbing. Better workplace environments for women requires everyone of both genders to work together to raise the standard of excellence by demanding that leaders stamp out misconduct. Culture is built on a collection of behaviors. What we allow is what we encourage. So how do we create better workplace environments for women? We must speak up. And yes, it's pretty scary. And you might possibly be judged. You probably will be judged. But your moral compass is exactly where it needs to be. And great leaders will see that and they will support you and be grateful for you for speaking out. As we have seen with many movements, when voices combine, power is created and positive change can occur. Last year, during the height of the pandemic, Australian company ANZ Capital learnt this very lesson when they promoted a sexual harasser to the CEO. They completely forgot about their people. Perhaps they didn't care about the message that they were sending. They made this decision fully aware that he had settled with a former female subordinate who had lodged a sexual harassment complaint. External counsel investigated the claim and found the accused guilty of sexual harassment. But the board still hired him, wreaking havoc on what we quickly learned was an already broken culture. When they announced his appointment to the media, outrage quickly followed, and ANZ Capital responded by downplaying the events and trivializing a very critical issue. Fortunately for women, it didn't die down. Women across the industry spoke up, employees went to the media, and both men and women were angry. Soon, investors started threatening to take their business elsewhere, and the result was a reshuffling of the board, some board members exited, and the CEO was demoted. This all happened because people spoke up. Now I know it's not perfect, because sexual harassers should never be able to become CEOs, but the outcome is progress, because if we use our voices to right the wrongs each time that they happen, then more decent people will end up in leadership positions and better decisions can be made. So if you really want to help create better working environments for women, speak up. Unlearning the social conditioning of women needing to be modest. So years ago, I learned that men are very comfortable in bragging and women will almost always avoid it. Now I learned this through job interviews because I've conducted quite a few over the years. And male candidates will typically come through and they will confidently walk you through their CV and highlight their successes. Is it bragging? Possibly, but I don't think it matters because in a job interview, you are supposed to position yourself as the ideal candidate. Now the female applicants would come in and they would talk through their CV, but they would always downplay their success. And in many cases, they would contribute their success to a team effort. If you were to call out an individual outcome that they'd achieved, they would acknowledge it, but also list a couple of names of people that had helped them achieve that outcome. This is a female problem perpetuated by gender norms, and it dictates modesty expectations in women, which really harms us in corporate life. I once asked my dad, how do I stand out? How do I position myself for more work opportunities? And he said, let your results speak for themselves. We assume that great work shines in itself, and it does, but there are many other factors that contribute to career progression. Being overly modest minimizes your potential, and it hinders others' perceptions of you. It's one thing to be too humble in the workplace and let others witness your work. But if you're too modest in networking forums, in job interviews, in the big moments that really matter, you'll struggle to secure leadership opportunities. So how do we find this balance between self-promotion and bragging while still maintaining some sort of humility? Consider stepping outside your comfort zone and being a little bolder. For instance, start practicing receiving compliments. And if you're at a networking event and you've had a terrific year and somebody approaches you and asks, how's business? Don't be modest and say, oh, it's all going fine. Be honest. Say thanks. We're having a terrific year. Things are going really great. How is business with you? These exercises are really easy to adopt. A quick language adjustment will see you from being a moderate operator to leadership material. With decades of societal pressure and conditioning to make others more comfortable by being modest, it's easy to default to what you've always known. However, it's important for you to remember that as you build your career, being shy or hesitant to talk about your success will hinder you. Ladies, if men can brag, we can brag too. And don't hold back on your knowledge. A great way to demonstrate your greatness is by showing. I used to have this idea that when I learned something new, everybody else already knew it. Many times, this has not been the case. So if you've learned something new, go to your manager and say, is there 5 minutes at the next team meeting? I'd like to share some insights with my colleagues. Presenting at staff meetings is a very natural thing to do, and if you can get into the rhythm of doing this from time to time, it's a great way to demonstrate your capabilities and your success. And doing it this way, it won't feel like you're bragging. So ladies, end the modesty. Don't let you be the reason that you can't progress. If you continue to describe yourself in mediocre terms, why would anyone view you differently? It's time to stop that. It's time to be really proud of your achievements and find a way to talk about them in a way that's natural to you. Partnering with the good men in our industry and organizations. Finally, my third key point, partnering with good men. Remember when I said we need to act and fight for our careers now? Well, we can't wait. Experts are predicting that gender parity in leadership roles won't happen at this rate until 2100. And I don't know about you, but I don't have the time. I can very proudly say, after 20 years, I am finally hanging with some really good men. So what does that look like? It starts with men who create spaces for women to be heard, who listen more than they tell, who respect you, who don't critique your appearance to achieve their standards of how a woman should look, feel, and behave. Simply put, they get it, and they go out of their way to help us. When something happens that's wrong, they deal with it swiftly. But here's the thing. Good men, as much as they want to help you, they may not know how. So it is on us to help them to help us. And I know sometimes it can feel like it's all on us. We have to do all the work. But part of that work is helping the good men to understand the challenges that we are facing, to understand these challenges and help you ascend into leadership positions. It's not a pipe dream. It can happen. I've seen it. I've personally benefited from it. There are plenty of good men in workplaces and in the broader banking industry. But I did speak to you earlier about raising your standards. So be careful who you apply this label to. Don't be so quick to offer up good men status, ladies. One way I'm trying to make a difference is by having more women in the talent pipeline. When vacancies occur, we often struggle to see female applicants, particularly in the segments of private banking, institutional, and global markets. I view this as a huge problem. A lot of these roles are revenue generating and deemed big business. And we already know that big business is run by men. So it's really important to understand that these positions with continual progression can often lead to the C-suite. So we have to have women in here. That's why I'm encouraging leaders that when they advertise positions, to not only accept those that apply, but to actively seek out female applicants, to work with me, to combine our networks, and to build a talent pipeline that includes women in the conversation. There's absolutely no guarantees in life, so no one's securing an opportunity just on the basis of their gender. But you have got to be in the running to win. So let's seriously think about this. If men can win, we can win too. If he wants to be a CEO, you can be a CEO too. There's a new Madam Vice President in America. That's a huge win. Anything is now possible. So as you go about your career and invest time and effort, make "if he can, I can" your new mantra. And if someone decides to deem you a risk, ask them why and encourage them to see you as an investment, because women bring returns too. If he can ask for a pay rise, you can ask for a pay rise. If he can be placed onto a leadership program, you can be placed onto a leadership program. If he can wear crazy cufflinks, I can wear dangly earrings. So speak up, be bold, brag a little, and surround yourself with really good men. Because ladies, if he can, I can.